Useless barbarians, I've invented paper and printing. This will revolutionize the storing and sharing of knowledge. Useless barbarian, I've invented gunpowder. This will revolutionize warfare. Useless barbarian, I've invented the compass. This will revolutionize trade and exploration. So now that you've known the 4 great inventions of China, what will you do? Buy my product, or I'll oof you with our superior guns and chips. Oh, that's right. Maybe this whole thing kind of backfired on China. Maybe they shouldn't have been inventing all that stuff after all. So it is true, about 2,000 years ago, paper as we know today was made by a Chinese court official. Then there's the Chinese monks that created this invention, as we all know. And then historians think China was the first civilization to develop a magnetic compass, but Western Europeans soon followed afterwards. The problem is, this comic is saying all of those things would eventually backfire on China, as a lot of Europe was going to use it against them, especially around the 18th century and of course into the 1900s. Many other external powers had spheres of influence within China. This place would then go on to have their century of humiliation. They just carved it up like a pizza. The student has become the master. Son, I am going to oof soon, says the Soviets to Russia. But before I do, I need to pass something on to you, my favorite son. When I say my final oof, you're allowed to have all of my $100 billion debt. Mama, why? Cries Russia, as the Soviets are no longer around. So after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, Russia was forced to pay a lot of the Soviet Union's debt. They actually only just recently finally repaid all that stuff off. The number might have been closer to 70 billion US dollars, but that's still a lot. Must have been a pretty difficult thing to do. You guys are a brand new country, and oh yeah, here's a bunch of debt you're gonna have to pay off. You would think that because Kazakhstan was actually the final member of the Soviet Union, they would have been stuck with all the debt. Yes, that's some of the perks for being the favorite son. Frick you, America! I'm gonna become independent because I'm the only state in the Union that is allowed to do it. What? No, you fool. It's illegal for any state to become independent, even you, Texas. Then what is that special thing that only I'm allowed to do? Ha! The only special thing you can do is split into 5 different states. No! What have you done? Oh no, they've just been balkanized. Welcome, new states, and don't forget to choose your flag. I hope you will not be like your Papa Texas. So I found this out about 2 years ago. Apparently it is true. Texas can't become an independent country. It can only become more different, smaller states. In the Supreme Court precedent, Texas versus White holds that states cannot succeed from the Union by an act of the state, and they figured that out all the way back in 1869. However, one thing Texas can do is secede from itself. Texas has the right to split itself into 5 states if it wishes, which always reminds me of this scene from a movie called Bernie. There's West Texas, flat ranches. This is how every person from Texas, I feel, describes Texas. A lot of people from Texas, I shouldn't say all. Tex meets the Mex.
That's where the Tex meets the Mex.
Everyone makes fun of Austin for being strange.
This is where the South begins. This is life behind the pine curtain.
Yes, this is where the deep South begins.
Known, it's a good place.
And I've never been able to get that scene out of my head when describing Texas. I'm glad we're still out here informing people about this common American myth. This useless land is mine, says Egypt. No, it's mine, cries Sudan, as they both argue over a random map. Flashback to this part of the globe is mine, says España. Okay, says Portugal. Hey, cool hat. Gracias, they respond in kindness. The good old days where there were no such thing as border conflicts, only like border agreements. And this is exactly what Spain and Portugal did back in 1494. They both just had a little meeting and they said, hey, Spain can have most of the Americas. Portugal is going to take Brazil and Africa, even a part of Australia. And then Spain is going to get Eastern Australia, a part of Papua New Guinea and New Zealand. They just randomly got into a room without inviting anybody else and was like, hey, you can have all this and I'll have all this. Like a couple of kids dividing the neighborhoods, which houses they're going to have. Although they were only talking about things south of the equator, they weren't dividing up Europe. Funny enough, you can still see it to this day since Portugal was allowed this part of South America, and that is where they slapped Brazil. Although they would end up extending a little bit further than that treaty, but it wasn't like the rest of the world was going to listen to that treaty anyways. Well, especially not the British and French, that's for sure. A lot easier to divide up land when none of the land is actually yours. Take me back to the good old days. Oh crap, screams Canada. Oh man, I haven't started on this, as they look at a calendar that says December 8th. Oh, their culture project is due. Give me that, as they steal Putin away from Quebec. Or Putin. Poutine. It's basically like fries, cheese, and gravy. I'll give all this back. I'm really sorry. I totally respect your culture and stuff. As it takes syrup from these poor natives. Perfect. The final touch, hockey, is the best of my culture. What the bloody hell is this? This is so disjointed and lazy, screams the UK. You just stole this from the French and indigenous and added hockey and some other things. What do you have to say for yourself? I am not a melting pot. I am a quilt. I mean a mosaic. So this comic is saying that Canada doesn't really have a culture, or at least the things that they do say they have. They just stole from Quebec or the natives. I mean, they did add hockey though, and a couple of other things like Tim Hortons and some no-no ganja. And surprisingly, syrup was actually invented by indigenous people living in the northeast of North America. Although I'm sure we've slightly changed the ingredients to that over the years. Probably not the exact same. Or Canada. Although they do say the exact same thing about the US too. I guess this is just kind of what happens when you're a nation built off of immigration. Bonjour, and welcome to the French language. We have indescribable words, undecryptable pronunciations, and complicated grammar. Also, you must learn because 409 people speak French. Are you pulling my monocle, says the UK? Do you expect me to learn your slimy French language with those rules hanging above? You've just entered my class and leave after just starting. You know what? Just get out. 409 million people speaking that gibberish. Imagine a world where the most common language has a more complex system. That's awfully ridiculous. Greetings and welcome to the English language. In this language we have confusing similar words, illiterate pronunciations, and puzzling grammar. Also, it is very important to learn English because we have over 1.5 billion speakers. Ayuda me, cries Spain. Yes, cough, dough, through. I can't even tell what that last word is. Oh, that's bad. Honestly, I've been saying this for a long time. English is unnecessarily difficult. I mean, just look at this. Tsunami, the T is silent. Honest, the H is silent. Island, S is silent. Q. There is no UE, it's just Q. Why not just put the letter? The word Q, like, literally confused me until I was 25 years old. I just refused to say it for a long time. And then, of course, there's, me. My boyfriend's first language isn't English, and he asked me how to say cut in the past, and I said cut. He then let out a wail of English and fell to the floor. I totally understand this. Although, keep in mind, the French heavily influenced the English language. At least 30% of modern English vocabulary is directly borrowed from French. So who's the real problem after all? One day, we need to finally get to the bottom of this. Ooh, it's 10:23 a.m. Wake up late in the morning since the company that I'm employed at does not enforce shifts. It's 11:02 a.m. and now I'm heading to work. Even though I can work remote, I've decided to come in anyways. Grab myself a soy chai latte, free of course to all employees. Time for my 2.5-hour lunch break. Go to the cafeteria, have some gluten-free, organic, plant-based, GMO-free lunch, all for free, of course. Can't work on an empty stomach. The next hour, after my amazing lunch, I've decided to head to our fitness studio in our comfy workplace and did some relaxing yoga in order to relieve all that food that I've eaten. It's 2:40 p.m. and finally time for work. I have hypersensitive ADHD, so therefore I've decided to do my work in a quiet work pod in order to be productive. I almost said POD. Today, I have a meeting scheduled in this quiet room. Literally a minute later, the meeting I was going to was canceled because no one decided to show up. Headed to our company's de-stress room, I enjoyed a glass of soy milk and did some adult-oriented activities that really helped me brighten my day. Wow, you mostly colored inside the lines too. That's a lot better than yesterday. Between 4 and 6, after the tiresome activity, I've decided to take a quick and well-deserved power nap to recharge my batteries. From 6 p.m. to 1 a.m., I've decided after a long day of work, I'm gonna go clubbing with my friends. Cut to Japan. Oh, and by the way, I make around $200,000 a year as they look at their iPad. Yeah, Japan is probably feeling kind of jealous right now, I would say. So obviously the country ball used here was the Canadian ball, but I think this is referencing like all of those TikToks of like the millennials or like later Gen Zers. They show a day in their life working at some sort of tech job and it just seems like the ultimate paradise. Honestly, every time I watch these, I'm always just so shocked at how much money people are wasting every day. I mean, I sometimes waste money too, but they're on a whole nother level. But yeah, compared to Japan, the work culture has been known to be very exhausting and unhealthy. Japan had some of the longest working hours in the world, but things are beginning to change a little bit to make it not so horrible. Nearly 1/4 of Japanese companies required employees to work more than 80 hours of overtime a month. That is insane. No wonder they're not having any kids. More differences between the East and West. The year is 1940. I bring tank to make blitzkrieg you. Of why, cries the Soviet Union. The year is 2022. I bring tank to help you stop Russia's blitzkrieg. Thanks, says Ukraine. I've mentioned this before, but wow, the changes that can happen in the span of about 80 years. Back in the 40s, Germany sending tanks to Ukraine was not a good thing. But now, everyone seems to be pretty happy about it. Well, almost everyone. The Soviet Union didn't like it back in those days, and their new offspring, Russia, probably doesn't like it either. So Germany has recently decided to provide Ukraine with Leopard 2 tanks. Actually, not just Germany, it's America and the UK as well. Their own tanks, different types of tanks. And as the topics of tanks have been coming up more and more recently, I always think of this graphic. Russia just has so many of them over here, over 12,000. Meanwhile, Ukraine needs just a lot more, so I guess that's what's going on. I almost just ended this with a line from Panzer to Leopard. I didn't realize the word Panzer is just tank in German. I guess it's a Leopard Panzer that they're getting over there in Ukraine. And big thanks to my patrons. Drew, I forgot to kidnap you. Next date is March 19th, 2023. The Polish, Lithuanian, Commonwealth, Taylor,
Portugal
John,
is
Denver,
not Balkans.
Good old Rye,
244,
Iowa,
aka
Barbados,
Drew, if you don't come to Krakow, Poland, I will find you.
Grandpa,
$20 is a lot, Drew.
Why am I doing
Taylor
this?
S.
Drew
and
does
Drew's
everything
goth
for $20.
girlfriend. Draven's annoying
LuxembourgLover,
friend. Robert
RyeThePie,
animation.
the Mexican
Twickenhamster.